All right, welcome to class 7. Tonight we're going to be going over scanning, the strategy scanners that I use, how to use them properly, and also how to write your own scanners. Okay, let me get the second recording started here. Let's see, trading course. So this will be available for you guys to watch on the recast. All right. All right, so everyone's filtered in, looks like pretty much. So we'll get started here. Stock scanning. This is one of the most important things to learn as a trader, and it's really hard to learn how to use scanners properly. When I was first trading, I honestly wasn't using scanners in the right way. I had scanner settings that I was trying to use, and what I was trying to do was use them as red light, green light indicators. Basically, if I got a scanner alert, it meant I should buy, hold for 10 cents. If it goes up, I make money. If it goes down, I get stopped out. And that's really not the way scanners are supposed to be used. Okay, so just like your charting software and your hotkeys with a good broker, you need stock scanners. Scanners are where you're going to find the ideas that you trade every single day. Okay, so they're a tool for idea generation, right? And that's one of the same values that our chat room has. The chat room is really good for idea generation. Just because I'm buying, XYZ at $12 doesn't mean you should also, but it can give you the idea that, okay, Ross has a long bias on this stock. I understand his strategy. I understand what he's looking at, and you can apply your own strategy to that stock if you think it looks good. Okay, so idea generation is really important. If you're sitting just staring at your screens and you don't know what to trade, it's very frustrating. You're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs and you don't know what to do. So having those scanners in front of you, it's going to give you a stream of ideas all day long. And on the one hand, you want a lot of ideas, but on the other hand, you can get overwhelmed by too much. So I try to balance my scanners. So instead of getting 5 alerts a minute, where it's just like boom, 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 I slow it down. So I go for quality versus quantity. But there's different scanners. I mean, there are people that are going to want scanners that are just, giving you high of day, everything that's hitting high of day. And, if their eye is trained to it, they'll be able to recognize what's hitting that scanner. For me, if I have something that's just constantly flashing, I learn how to ignore it. And then it's really of no use if something good pops up there because I'm ignoring it. Okay, so I use Trade Ideas, as many of you know. You can go to tradeideas.com. They're a software provider for stock scanners, and for the most part, their scanners, the engine that runs it is very simple. And it's very straightforward and it's easy to learn. You can write some extremely complex scanners, which you can get as detailed as you want, but you can actually write some pretty complex code. And it's designed in a way where even if you're not a programmer by nature or by training, you can still write some pretty complex stock scanners. So I really like their software just for the simplicity of it and the fact that it's very intuitive and easy to use. Generally, I like to use, in terms of scanner settings, I do like simple scanners. I try not to overcomplicate it, although I do have some complex scanners. I like the simple scanners. I think there is, a lot to, there's a lot of benefit to just having something that's very simple. When you get overcomplicated scanners, you can get false alerts. You can start to get into the frame of mind where everything that hits that scanner has got to be just perfect because of how complex it is, and you can start getting yourself a little bit off track where you're focusing on designing the perfect scanner that gives you perfect results. Where in my experience, the best scanners have been ones that cast a rather wide net and allow me to review the alerts and pick out the ones that I think are the best. Okay, so scanners are a tool, right? And we want to have the best tools. I want all of you to have the best tools, but if you don't know how to use them, they're really not of very much value. So learning how to use trade ideas properly, it allows you to harness the technology and ultimately put more money in your pocket. So if you think of a carpenter, for instance, and you've got a 17-year-old who's wants to start and become a carpenter, and he gets all the fancy tools, well, he's not going to know how to use them because he doesn't have the skill, right? So what good are those fancy tools? And on the other hand, you might have a 45-year-old carpenter who's been doing it for 20 years. His tools are worn out, they're old, but he has the skill and he can do amazing things with, poor technology and, less than perfect tools. So I think of trading in a similar way, right? You want to have the best tools, but if you don't know how to use them, they're really of no use. So the goal of this class is to teach you how to use scanners properly, right? We've already talked about managing risk, how to choose the right stocks, how to set up your charts, right? How to find patterns. And we've gone over some of the details of the specific strategies that I trade on a day-to-day basis, right? The gap and go, the momentum, and the reversal strategy. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how I find those stocks on a day-to-day basis. All right, so the tools of the trade. Here's an example of what my trade ideas window looks like. Typically, I'll have this floating on one side of my window, and I'll have all my charts on the other side. So I can just click any of these tickers and load it up in my chart. All right, now as you can see, there's quite a bit going on here, and we're going to go over these different scanners over the course of the next hour or so. But just know that even though there is a lot going on, I've been able to unify this in a way where I know all of my reversals are here. These are all designed in the same way. My gappers and earnings are down here. This is sort of a package, and then I've got the momentum up here. So I've divided it in a way that works really well, and they all, as a group, are basically giving me the stocks that I need to execute my strategy, all right, throughout the day, from 9:30 until 4 o'clock. Okay, so in terms of daily setups, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't spend a lot of time scanning for daily setups. I mostly focus on the intraday setups. The problem is when you have a great daily chart with no catalyst, a lot of times it doesn't break out in the way that we might like it to. So it can be very frustrating to do all that research, scanning daily charts, looking for catalysts, doing some research on the earnings and things like that, and then seeing that the day that we're supposed to get the breakout and we actually start to break out, there's no volume. There are no buyers to come in and create that good resolution, right? Pattern resolution, that's when a pattern resolves the way we expect it to. Okay, and a pattern that breaks down is going in the opposite direction. So pattern resolution is going to be highest on stocks that have a lot of intraday volume due to a catalyst. And even stocks that have a horrible daily chart can still run 100%. So focus more on the intraday charts and don't worry right now about spending too much time doing the homework in the evening trying to study the daily charts. Okay, so pattern scanning. And this is another kind of interesting thought. You have two options. On the one hand, you can scan for patterns, and on the other hand, you can scan for the type of stocks that we want to find patterns in. So what's better? Look for wedges, or look for the hot stocks and then manually check that chart to see if there's any wedges or flags. I've found it's better to look for the stock rather than the pattern. Because again, we look for the pattern and we see, oh, hey, this stock has an awesome flat top pattern and a really nice ascending wedge. Or check out this stock, it's got a really great bull flag. But the problem is, again, if that stock is not a hot stock, if it's not trading on high relative volume, if it doesn't have a catalyst, the odds of it having clean resolution are going to be very low. So when someone says to me, hey, look at XYZ, it's got a bull flag, if XYZ wasn't already on my radar in the morning and it doesn't have news during the day, odds are that bull flag, it may just be the result of high frequency traders and the algorithms moving shares, and it just took the form of a bull flag by coincidence. It may not be a pattern that is going to be bought up by retail traders. And that's especially going to be true on something like an ETF, electronically traded fund, TVIX, the SPY, any of the gold funds. These can form patterns, but they're because they're derivatives, because their price action is derived from the price action of something else. We can't really trade the breakouts on those derivatives because people aren't going to buy them up for the breakout. They're buying them because of something that's happening somewhere else. And I know that's a little abstract, but the point is we want to focus on the hot stocks. So even though we will go over a few scanners that I use for scanning for patterns, in general, I find it's a lot easier to look for stocks that are strong and then go look for the patterns that we like, right? And we talked about the patterns in class 5. We were talking about the bull flags, the flat top breakouts, the flat bottom breakdowns, and the bear flags. Okay? So here's a good example, EDAP. So this is a stock that formed a really nice bull flag, right? But I started watching it not because it was forming a bull flag, but because it was on my surging up scanner. So it was on my scanner that said, Ross, check out this stock. It's got a ton of volume. Then I look at that stock, and whether it was forming a bull flag, an ascending wedge, or something kind of in between, I would be interested in it because of the volume. The pattern is just giving me that safe, low risk entry, right? So minimum criteria, when I'm trading in general, I look for a minimum of 500,000 shares of volume, and I prefer more than 1,000,000. And I prefer stocks trading on 2 times their average relative volume. So relative volume, we've talked about this a little before, but just as a refresher, volume is relative. A stock like Bank of America trades tens and even hundreds of millions of shares a day, whereas a stock like DGLY might only trade 100,000 shares a day. So what is high volume for Bank of America is not going to be high volume for DGLY. So we have an indicator called relative volume, and it just measures the average volume of that stock over a period of time and then says, okay, look, today is above average. So it may still be very light volume, but today it's above average. All right, so a minimum of 500,000 shares of volume for my scanners. I prefer, I prefer heavier volume. Sometimes right at the open, if we only have 200,000 shares, but the volume is pouring in, 50,000 shares a minute, I might go ahead and take a trade. That's a good question. Minimum 500,000 to 1,000,000 daily average or today? And the answer to that question is a minimum of 500,000 shares traded today. Now, you'll find that sometimes there's a stock that only trades 10,000 shares a day, and then tomorrow it's going to gap up 80% because of some breaking news. So it doesn't really matter that it usually doesn't trade any volume at all, because today it's going to be in play. So we're going to focus on how much volume it has today. And we're going to focus on the fact that the volume has to be above average. So in the morning when I get up, the first thing I do is my pre-market scanning. Now pre-market scanning is really important. When the bell rings at 9:30, we already want to have a game plan. Right? We want to have a game plan, a watch list. You don't want to roll out of bed at 9:25 and then come sit in front of your computer. You're not going to be prepared, and you're most likely not going to be able to take advantage of the volatility in the first 5 minutes, which is where I oftentimes make a lot of money. Okay, so you want to get up a little early, whatever time is good for you. But at 9 a.m. I do some pre-market scanning, and I create a watch list. Okay, so the pre-market scans, I'm looking at gappers and earnings. I'm looking at stocks that are already on the move before the market is opened. Okay, that's how I prepare my day. I sort all pre-market stocks by the highest volume. So I see where pre-market is there already a lot of volume. That's an indicator of where we'll see a lot of volume once the market actually opens. Okay, so my gapper scanner and my earnings scanners, I scan for 4% gaps, and I scan for stocks that are reporting earnings in the last 24 hours. Now, the little bit of a issue with the earnings scanner is that it actually scans for stocks reporting earnings within 24 hours. So they may have already reported, or they may be reporting today. So we'll sometimes get some stocks on that scanner that are actually not very interesting yet because they're not going to report earnings until after the close. But usually we can weed those out pretty quickly because they're not going to have a lot of pre-market volume. Okay, so relative volume leaders. So when I'm scanning for stocks in play, I'm always looking for the high relative volume stocks. So whether it's, pre-market, I'm not actually able to scan for relative volume. That doesn't start calculating until the bell rings. I can just scan for high volume. So once the bell rings, I'm looking at the high relative volume stocks, and I'll be watching those all day long. So the top 10 relative volume leaders, they can be in play all day long, long, short. They have the volume, right? So they're going to be good stocks to watch all day long. And you're guaranteed if there's a setup on one of those, top 10 relative volume leaders, you're not going to miss it. So one approach, if you're having a hard time getting in trades, is just to focus on watching the top 5 biggest movers each day with the highest relative volume. Right? You got to set up in one of those and you're not going to miss it. So my relative volume scanner looks like this here. I sort this in a couple different ways. Midday, I'll sort it by position in the course of the day. So this green here tells me that the stock is at highs, and the red down here says the stock is at its lows. So these are the relative volume leaders, but they're not sorted by highest volume. They're sorted by their position in their daily range. So the reason I do this is because I find it really helpful just to look through the ones that are hitting highs or just underneath the highs, because I know one of them could be setting up a bull flag. Right? Bull flags are consolidation right underneath the highs. So a stock with high relative volume that's at high of day or just under high of day potentially could be forming a pattern that we are familiar with and that we like. So at any given time of the day, I can just flip through these top stocks right here based on their position in the daily range and look for a pattern that I like. On the flip side, I could look at the stocks down here hitting their lows and see if they're setting up for a flat bottom breakdown. Okay, so during the day, usually from 10 a.m. until 4, I'll have this sorted by position in the daily range. But a couple other ways that I'll sort this, I'll sort by highest relative volume. So then the stock with the most relative volume ratio today is going to be at the top, and they'll just be sorted by highest relative volume. Okay, so you can see there's some down here that are a 7, a 9, and then there's this here, ETRM, that's a 55. Right, and this wasn't actually in play for more than a few minutes, but volume really surged into it when it was in play. And then we have some others here, a 44, a 28, 39. So these are in play, at various times of the day. Okay, so we can sort by position in the daily range. We can sort by highest relative volume. We can sort by highest total volume, or I can sort by highest relative volume in the last 5 minutes. Okay, so this tells me in the last 5 minutes which of these has the most volume coming into it. So SMSI at 1.7K, 1700, that has the most volume out of all of these, it looks like. Okay, and then down here we've got one that's 11 and 14, so these have almost no volume. Right, so we don't even care about those. Even if they were at high of day and setting up, they don't have the volume. So a good way to sort these would either be by position in the daily range or by 5-minute volume surge. Does that make sense? You can color code this. These are colored the dark. Let's see. Um, the darkest are the highest relative volume, and the lightest are the lowest. So these are yellow because they're very low relative volume, and then the dark blue, almost black, had the highest relative volume. So if I was sorting this by highest relative volume, it would just go from black down to yellow. But since I'm sorting it by position in the daily range, it's going to be scattered around. So you can adjust these color codings, and that way, if I was sorting this by relative volume, then I would probably color code it differently because I already know it's sorted by relative volume. Having the colors go from blue and a histogram back down to yellow is really not helpful. So maybe then I would color code based on high to low volume surge, and I would be able to see, okay, the highest volume stock in terms of relative volume is at the top, but I can color it so I'll see the yellow is the very low volume and the black is the high volume. Okay, so the volume surge on the 5 minute right now doesn't have any minimum setting on this particular scanner, but on many scanners I will set it to a minimum of 200. And relative volume, this actually doesn't have a minimum either, which is why you see some that are down here at a 6. These are just sorting by the highest relative volume. And I think what I do is I cap it so I look for the highest relative volume, but I only look at like the top 20 stocks. So that way I can pretty much have all of them on this watch list. This particular image is from it's from today. So you can send me the settings of your scanner and I'll take a look at them if they're different. Okay, so now my momentum scanners, these are scanners, in contrast to the high relative volume, which is more of a watch list, the momentum scanners are the scanners that are searching for high volume surges right now. So they're scanning the entire market for the stocks with the most volume. This for me is really critical. This is where I find the majority of my trades intraday in the middle of the day. It's just by looking for the volume. So we know as day traders, we profit from volatility, and volatility needs volume in order to be at least relatively predictable. Okay, so I'm going to use the surging up scanner right here all day long to search for the stocks with the highest volume. And I'm going to sort it by 5 minute volume surge. So in this case, anything over 500 is going to be pretty interesting to me. Okay, so below 500, not as interesting. Above 1,000 is quite interesting, and we've seen some as high as 20 or 30,000. Especially right at the open. They can really surge with tremendous volume. Okay, so I sort this by 5 minute volume surge, and then I just click on these stocks and see if there's something I like. All right, now this one you can see there's a stock on here, MDLY, that has 563,000 shares. Realistically, at 252, when I took this screenshot, that would not be a time of day I would trade a stock with that light volume. So that for me is not really in play. ETRM, on the other hand, has 19 million shares of volume. So just by looking at the columns here and the stats, I can get a feel for whether or not I would even consider a trade, right? ETRM, high relative volume, high volume on the day, good volume surge, it's worth looking at. Whoops. SMSI, that's also good. NEWM, that one's good. VICL, this one's a little iffy. Okay, and all of our students can download these scanners from the website. So you can go ahead and log in and download them. So now the flat top breakout scanner, this is more of me branching out in an attempt to find patterns. Now, as we've talked about in the past, computers are not very good at recognizing patterns. So there isn't a default scanner for flat top breakouts. There are some programs that may have something, but it's very difficult for the computer to recognize the pattern because the pattern is a visual representation. And if we look at a chart, and I'll just pull a chart up here just for an example. Let's see, we can look at XON. We'll look at this one. So on XON, when I'm looking at this here, I can see there's a bull flag right here. Okay, so it popped up, and then there's a couple candles of consolidation, right? I can visualize that, but this is plotting price and time. So if we stretch this out, if we stretch the time way out, this might not look like a bull flag anymore, right? This might just look like, oops, this might just look like candles that are sideways, okay? So depending on how you view your charts, it can really change what the pattern looks like. And that's why patterns, to a certain extent, can be a little bit, I might see something that you don't see just because of the way your charts are displayed. And that's why we want to go for the really obvious patterns that are hard to miss. But the point really is that patterns, if they're even hard at times for retail traders to see, they're going to be extremely hard for the computer to see. So from a technical perspective, what can we say about this pattern? Okay, well, this stock just made a big move. Okay, so it made a move from 33.83 up to 36.82. Okay, so we could say, well, we want to look for stocks that have just moved, let's say, 2 points in the last 15 minutes. Okay, so a stock that has just moved up 2 points in 15 minutes. Okay, well, then we're going to find a lot of stocks that have just surged up, and they might be at high of day. So then we say, well, we want to see 2 points up in 15 minutes, but then we want to see in the last 5 minutes that the stock is only trading in a 30-cent range. Okay, and let's just say, for example, so then we know it surged up 2 points, but then in the last 5 minutes, it's been trading sideways in this tight range. So this is where we start to use the technicals to box out this pattern. Okay, so now we're saying, all right, well, we're allowing it to surge up this much and pull back this much. We've already created a little bit of a time limit of 15 minutes. So what else can we add here? Well, we could say, all right, the stock should be hitting high of day, or it should be not more than 50 cents off the highs. So we know this isn't a stock that's just bouncing up off the lows. Or we could say that it has to be above the 9 exponential moving average, and it has to be above the VWAP. Okay, so we can start giving more context for where this pattern is going to show up where we really like it. And then we might have to add some volume parameters, right? Well, the stock needs to have, 2 times relative volume on the day, and in the last 5 minutes, at least a 500% volume surge. Right, so the more we add these criteria, the more we're going to start to hone in, I'd like to think, on a good scanner to find these patterns. And that's basically what I did with the flat top breakout scanner. Okay, so I was scanning for stocks that have moved over 5% in the last 2 hours and are consolidating in a 1.5% range in the last 30 minutes, right? So this is a little bit of a longer term flag formation. They have to be near the top of the daily range. Specifically, I look for the top 20% of the daily range. Like, we have to quantify it, okay? So I go through trade ideas and I start selecting these different filters and customizing this scanner to basically box out a pattern that I think it's going to send back. I write the scanner, and then what do I get back? Lots of junk. Okay, that's going to happen the first time you write any scanner. And then you start filtering it out. You realize, oh, I forgot to put something in there about, XYZ, maybe about the float. Like, you're getting a $500 a share stock. So, well, I've got to change the price range a little bit. I've got to change the float. Maybe I want to put something in there about the position in the Bollinger Bands or the RSI. I don't want to see a stock that's already at a 95 RSI because I'm not going to want to buy it. Okay, so the more we fine tune it, the closer we get to a scanner that's kicking back patterns. But it's always going to kick back a little bit of junk. And inevitably, it's also going to kick back stocks that might have the perfect pattern, but don't have the volume, right? So it can be a little bit frustrating and time consuming. Now, I put a lot of time into some of these scanners. it's something I was doing in my free time, and I do find them helpful, but I wouldn't go crazy spending the time that I put into it. Well, all of our students, of course, can just have the scanners, but um, it's not something I would really focus on right now in your career. I would focus instead more on the fundamentals and just use the scanners that we're making available to you, and they'll be uh, totally sufficient. So the flat top breakouts here, this is the scanner. These ones you can tell they're color coded just by the type, so you don't get really any detail in the color, it's just magenta. We've got the relative volume, the total volume on the day, the 5-minute volume surge, and the time of day. And this type of scanner is actually going to be adding a new line item every time a new alert pops up. So the advantage is that we can go look at historical data and see over the course of the day when different stocks would have been hitting the scanner, right? Now, some of the other scanners that we were looking at, like the surging up scanner, this is going to show me all the stocks that meet my criteria at any given time. So it's not giving me a timestamp for when this pops up. It's just telling me right now, at this moment, these 10 stocks fit your criteria for this watch list. Okay, so this is more of a watch list technique, and this scanner here is more of a stream, where we get the stream of scanner alerts, and we can go filter through them and get a little bit more detail on it if we want to try to potentially automate this scanner into a trading strategy. Now, I don't think that that's really realistic. It's something that I've tried in the past, and that was part of my goal with spending a lot of time writing these scanners, is that I would say, look, I know flat top breakouts are a great pattern. I'm going to write a scanner that can find them, and I'll start trading the scanner on a computer. Right? I'll write it as an algorithm. It'll be a black box system, and it's just going to go trade on its own with a couple hundred shares, whatever, automated trading. The problem is I found that although there would be some really, really great alerts in there, there was a lot of junk in there that me just looking at would be enough to say that's not worth putting money into. And ultimately, slippage and commissions made it so running that type of strategy scanner in a black box setting really wasn't feasible. Okay, beta. So beta, this refers to the volatility of the stock versus the volatility of the market. So if the market moves by X amount, stocks with a 1 to 2 to 3 ratio beta are going to move that much more. Okay, so when the overall market's choppy, these stocks are going to be all over the place. And a stock with a low beta, the overall market will be choppy, and these stocks don't even care. Okay, so beta can be it can be helpful. If we're looking at stocks that are all selling off, finding a low beta stock that's selling off can be helpful because we know the sell-off is not really because of the market, it's because of something going on with that stock. Or a stock that's running during a market sell-off usually is going to have a lower beta because it's bucking the trend of the overall market. So the higher the beta, the more volatile these stocks will be, which, can be good if we want stocks that are going to trend with the overall market. But being in a trade and then having the market all of a sudden dive 50 or 75 points and this stock dives with it just because it has a higher beta is going to be a little bit frustrating. It's just going to be more reactive to the overall market. So, if we're catching a bottom in the market, getting in a high beta stock for a bottom bounce is going to return a lot more than if you just bought the SPY. So this one, why does it show SCCO here 5 times at the same timestamp? Well, this probably actually had, it popped up at different seconds on the timestamp. So it's not that they all popped up at once, it's just that they keep repeating. And this is one of the things that can be a little bit annoying with strategy scanners, is that a stock could be meeting your criteria for several minutes, and so it'll keep populating. It'll keep popping up there, and sometimes it'll fill up your window just with that alert. And then when it's no longer meeting the criteria, it'll stop alerting it. Okay, so the 5-minute volume, this tells us how much the volume is surging in the last 5 minutes. So it's basically like 5-minute relative volume. Okay, so higher is better because that tells us there's a lot more volume. It's same with regular relative volume over the course of the day. This is relative volume, think of it over the course of 5 minutes. So this tells us in the last 5 minutes how much volume this stock had compared with usual. Okay, so that's why on the surging up scanner I have it sorted by 5-minute relative volume because that's what I'm looking for, stocks with a lot of volume in the last 5 minutes. All right, now moving away a little bit from the geometric patterns, the top and bottom reversal scanners are very simple in a lot of ways, and we're going to write one together in a few minutes here, but these top and bottom reversal scanners are simply looking for stocks hitting either new highs or new lows. But we look for at least 5 consecutive red candles for the new lows. Okay, so the scanner is really quite simple. We just have to increase the filters a little bit to give us more of the stocks that we like. So if we're thinking about doing a bottom bounce, we're thinking about that rubber band and we want this stock to be really stretched out. So how do we quantify the stretch, right? Well, we can say 5 red candles in a row. But what if those 5 red candles only went down a total of like 5 cents, right? So then maybe we say, well, not only 5 red candles in a row, we also want to see that it's dropped 50 cents in the last 10 minutes. Or we want to see that it's at least 30 cents away from its 9 moving average, or that it's at least 2% away from the VWAP. Right? We can try to quantify that extension in different ways and just test out what works best. So, over the course of the years, Jeff and I, we've both written scanners, and this reversal scanner version 6, which we just released today, is right now one of the strongest scanners. It's, the result of years of work, but it's something that I feel pretty good about. So this is a stock scanner that's giving us stocks hitting here in green new highs, okay, with an RSI of greater than 70. The higher the RSI, the more green it's going to get in that box. Okay, looking for at least 4 consecutive green candles. So this tells us how many we have, 5 consecutive, 6 consecutive. So the more consecutive, the more pink it's going to get. All right, then on the bottom bounces, this one, I'm actually surprised there's a 37 RSI on there. But in any case, there's a 5-minute RSI that's 37. Should just be below 30, but that one slipped through the cracks. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that one. But in any case, we're looking for at least 4 red candles. Okay, there we've got 5 and 6. The lower the RSI, the more red it's going to get. Okay, so 12, 11 RSI. So we know that stocks that have a very low RSI are extended to the downside. Does that mean they're going to bounce right away? No. They could keep selling off for 2 or 3 more points. We don't want to buy just because they have a low RSI, but this gives us a context for the current price action. We're already very bottomed out. Okay, so if we see we've got 10 RSI and we've got a 2,000% volume surge on the downside, okay, and we've got 7 red candles, we're going to watch this for a potential bottom bounce. Okay, so let's look at some of these on the chart today. All right, so we'll just put that right there and we'll look at the chart here. So we've got FLML. I'll make this a little smaller. So FLML, this hit at 10:04. Okay, so 10:04 it started hitting. It kept hitting at 10:08. Hit again at 10:12. Okay, and then by the time it bottomed out, it's hit the scanner a couple times, but it hasn't bounced yet. What do I look for when I'm doing a reversal trade? Right, this is part of our trading strategy. I look for the first 5-minute candle to make a new high. 1453 was the high. What's our target? The 9 moving average. That's 80 cents away. Okay, and we hit it. Nice 80-cent move right there. Okay, so that's a good bottom bounce. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red candles, getting that extension to the downside, the volume's peaking, and then we get that bounce. Looks like we got a couple more trades on this today, potentially, although they didn't hit on the scanner because they didn't meet the criteria that I've set. But there were some other potential trades. You can see that this one was a little choppy off the bottom, curling a little bit and then going. This one a little bit cleaner, but not perfect. Okay, so one of the things that we look for is the biggest extension off the 9 moving average. That gives us more profit potential. Let's look at STJ. This fired off for a short at 10.10. Okay, squeezes up, candle outside the Bollinger Bands, short this, target is the 9 moving average. Okay, so from 68 down to 67, 63. The problem with this one, I would say, is that you don't have a very good profit-loss ratio, right? Your loss up here, if you stopped at high of day, is too far. So you'd have to set an arbitrary stop. You'd have to tighten up the stop to get a bigger profit-loss ratio. We want a tight stop and a big profit window. So this one's not really ideal from a profit-loss standpoint, but the pattern is still good. Let's look at XON. This was a top reversal at 11.03. Okay, so here we have at 11.05, it started to go red, but we didn't get a 5-minute candle to make a new low until right here. Okay, so potential short right here at 33.90. Profit target on this one's only 33.50, so you've only got about 40 cents, and your stop on this is 70 cents away. So again, we look at this manual review, right? The human checks it. This is why we can't have the system doing it automatically. We check it, we say, you know what, not a good profit-loss ratio, not going to take that trade to the short side. VIAB. This one hit the bottom bounce scanner at 11.12 this morning. Okay, so 11.12, we get this sell-off here, nice sell-off, get a little bit of a bounce, pops up for 1-2 candles, then goes a little sideways, makes another move up. So not a big winner, but there was a little bit of potential in that. Prudential, PRU. This one was on lighter volume, 938,000 shares. And you can see this one's more of that slow grind that we're talking about. Just sort of a slow grind down. You know, it has the price range because it's an $80 stock, but it's a slow grind down. You get long at $80.74, makes a move up to 81.17, 81.25. So 50-cent move, not a bad bounce. And then ABC at 11.40. Okay, so we'll go back to 11.30, 11.40. You get that topping tail, candle outside the Bollinger Bands. We short this, cover around the 9 moving average. Okay, so same pattern again and again. This is where we use the scanners to help us generate these ideas. They're not all going to be good ideas, but this is where we find the majority of them. All right, so I also have scanners designed for volume spikes. Okay, now volume spikes are usually going to be associated with news. So a stock that starts spiking on volume, we might hear it on our volume spike scanner, bells are ringing if you have the audio turned up. So you'll hear that moving, you go check it, you see the stock is spiking up, and then you're listening to you're listening to your Benzinga streaming news and you hear that there's takeover chatter, right? So it already draws your attention before we know what the news is. And that can be really helpful, especially with these fast moving markets. We hear that something is going on with one of these names, we see the volume, hear the catalyst, and then we jump in for a trade. All right, so what we're going to do now is make a scanner. Okay, so I'm going to put this window down here. So when you load trade ideas, all right, I'm going to load it up. You can load up your platform. For all of our students, you go to load layout, If you've downloaded our layout, you just click the layout right here and click open. Okay, so it might be in your downloads folder. If you dragged it to your desktop, you download the layout and then open the layout here. You click open and it populates. All right, so if you want to create a new scanner, you can go into new alert window. So you can see there's a couple different types of windows. There's a new alert window. Alert windows are these types of windows where you have a stream of stocks coming down. We have a new top list window. The top list window is like the relative volume top list or the surging up top list. Okay, or the gappers, these are top lists as well. You have the multi-strategy window where you can put several strategies into one window, and this is what I've done here with the reversal scanner. I've actually got the bottom reversal scanner and the top reversal scanner both built into the same window. Okay, now if I had a scan, and that's the same with the high-low RSI scanner right here. If you have a scanner that you built in an individual window and you want to add it to a multi-scanner window, you just go to New Multi-Scanner Strategy window right here. You right-click it and go to Strategies, New Strategies, Collaborate, and then you can paste in the link right here. Okay, so the way you get these links is you right-click and you click, you can either collaborate all for the entire window, or if you just want to collaborate on one scanner, you copy right here, click Cancel, Strategies, New Strategy, Collaborate, and then I'm going to paste it. Okay, so now I've got this one here. If I go to Historical Data, History, I can go to Time Frame, This Morning, and then I get the scanners, or the alerts. Okay, now you'll notice these are not color-coded, so we're going to have to color-code this based on what we want. So let's say I want to color-code these based on, well, they're all at the lows and they've all got relative volume. So they're all going to show the same color no matter which way I do it. But what you want to do is right-click on one of these columns and you can go to Custom Colors for Relative Volume. Okay, and then you've got your color chooser here, and you can choose which colors you want, and then click OK. And it's going to color it. Now if you want to color all of them, you right-click, go to Strategies, go to the below 10 RSI, whatever the name is, click Colors. Let's say the background, I want it to be this purple color. It's going to be purple. Okay? So now let's make a new scanner. Let's make one from scratch. So new alert window. All right. Let's go to, no, I want a new one, brand new. Let's see. All right, well, we'll just go into configure. Now, when you're in the configure strategy window, you can choose some of the windows that are built into Trade Ideas. Okay, there's some from thestreet.com that you can set up and start trading off of. There's bearish strategies here. There's bullish strategies here. So new highs on 2 times the relative volume. You could just say next. No price filter. Just say done. And this will be the scanner. If you want to see how it would have performed today, you look at today. And then you can start scrolling down and looking at the alerts. Now, an alert that's set up for new highs on 2 times relative volume is going to return a ton of stocks. So this is probably not going to be a very helpful alert. All right, so let's go in here and go to Configure. Go to Advanced. So I'm going to go in. This is the Advanced window. So at this point, when I'm in the Advanced window, if I want to take one of their settings, I can work with one of those. I can use it as the base that I'm going to modify, or I can just go in and make my own. Okay, so let's say, all right, I'll go for new highs, and we'll do filtered. Okay, let's do specific window filters, window specific filters. All right, so price range. This is where we start adding some of our filters. All right, so I'm going to say a price range of, let's just say $3, okay, up to 200. Volume today should be at least 500,000 shares. Okay, I'm not going to cap it though. Relative volume of at least 2. Volume in the last 5 minutes, let's say at least 400. Well, let's say 400, yeah. Change from the close, let's say 5%. Okay, we want stocks that are up at least 5% from the close yesterday. All right, so those are a few settings. Now, if you want more, you go into search, and then you can choose a category. All right, so alerts and filters. You can choose one of the subcategories. You can see geometric patterns. There are some here, but they're not, they're not great, right? They're going to return a lot of noise, which is why I tried to find ones that would be a little bit better. So we'll just go with all filters. Now what I typically do is I'll just start typing in what I'm looking for. So let's say I want RSI. Okay, boom, there's RSI. I'm going to use the 5-minute RSI, and I'm going to click Add Filter. Okay, so I want to look for stocks that have an RSI of at least 80. Okay, so this is going to be the beginning of a surging up scanner. A top reversal scanner. Consecutive 5-minute candles. Let's go add filter. So let's just say at least 3 consecutive 5-minute candles. We can always increase these numbers to tighten out the filter a little bit later. Bollinger Bands. We'll say position of the 5-minute Bollinger Bands. Let's say a minimum of at least 80. And now you can click this little show me button, and it'll say, okay, the price is at least 80% of the way above the lower Bollinger Band. Okay, so that just defines what you set right there if you're a little confused about what the parameters are really referring to. All right, so symbol list, we can go to exchanges. I'm going to have all the exchanges highlighted. Well, not all of them. I'm going to have NASDAQ, NYSE, and Amex. Okay, symbol list, you don't have to mess around with that. Columns, these are going to be the actual columns of the scanner right here. So you may want to change these a little bit. Let's say I want to know 5-minute RSI, and I want to know 5-minute consecutive candles, and I want to know position in the Bollinger Bands. Okay, so let's just say okay, okay. So we'll go to history today. And the first thing I'm going to do is select colors, and let's see, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. Let's go a little easier on the eyes. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, so this right here, it still says new highs, but that's not correct. I have to just go and rename it. Okay, so let's see, where do I go? I'd just go into configure your strategy, go to name, and then we'll just say trading course test scanner, and click done. History again, today. All right, so these are the stocks that hit the scanner today. All right, so now consecutive 5-minute candles, let's go custom colors for consecutive 5-minute candles. And we're going to say, I want, let's just use, how do we do this? We'll do it like this. So I'm going to use these brighter colors for the consecutive 5-minute candles, but it's not a 0 to 100 scale, right? It's not a 0 to 100 scale. It's actually going to be, let's see, a negative, let's call it a -5. Delete the 0. A -2. Delete the 1. And then we'll have 3, and this will be, actually we'll delete this guy here, I'll make the 10 a 2, and this one I'm going to make a 5. Okay, because we're never going to see 100 consecutive green candles. Oops, this one I'm going to make the 5, that brighter color. Okay, so I got to take away the 100 and take away the 10. Okay, so now it's -5, 2, +2, and 5. I'm going to click OK, and boom, it's populated. All right, now in this particular case, this scanner is only looking at top reversals. But we'll just see, we'll take a look at what we've got on here. So we've got semi, SEMI at 1031. So semi at 1031, and we're thinking this is a stock that's a potential reversal, right? It's a stock that has an 80 plus RSI, so we're looking for anything on this to be a potential reversal. So 1030, in this particular case, I'd say, the better alert would have been back here. This would have been a better short alert. Up here, it's not quite extended as we might like. Okay, so that one's not really that great. XON, this one we were already watching at this time at 11, so we know that this one was a decent bounce or a decent top reversal. AMPE at 230 and then again at 330. Okay, so that's okay. There at 220, that's got some potential. Okay, then up here, this one's more of a slow grind, so that one's not as good. BBRY, there was some news coming into the close. Okay, so, we wouldn't have wanted to short that news, but from a technical perspective, this pattern is good. All right, and that's kind of how we work with these. So I might go into this and say configure. I like this. I like the results, but I'd like it more if we only got stocks that, well, let's say are actually at 95, really riding that Bollinger Band. And let's also say the 8 simple moving average. Okay, so I'm going to say the change from the 8 simple moving average. Now I've created a custom scanner setting in Trade Ideas, which if you want to create it, you have to go to TradeIdeas.com, and I'll show you guys how to do that here. Just going onto the website on my other monitor. Okay, so in this case, the default settings would be, what I'm looking to do here is only find stocks that are at least like 30 cents above the moving average, the 8-9 moving average, because that's going to give me more of a profit target, because I usually like to cover up when I'm shorting close to that moving average for my first target. So I could do change from 8 simple moving average on the 5-minute, and I could use this. This could work just as add that filter and just say it's got to be at least, let's just say a minimum of 1%. Okay, just show me just to make sure I'm typing this in the right way. The price is at least 1% above the 8 simple moving average. Okay. I use the 9 exponential, but the 8 simple is what they have, so I can work with that. On the flip side, I can go into Trade Ideas. Let's go to their website here. Go to log in. So I'm going to log into my account. Okay, so I'm logged in. We can go to custom formulas. When you log in, you can go to custom formulas. Okay, and these are some of the custom formulas that I've written. So U0. Okay, what you do is you go to U, this is user 345. If you've never made one, then you'll still have U0 available. You go to create new. And when you get to the create new window, it'll look like this. U0 and edit. Last VWAP. Okay, so you could type that in, and this will tell you when you use this custom indicator how far away you are from the VWAP, and you click save. Okay, so I did one for distance off the VWAP, and I did a second one for distance off the 8 moving average. Okay, on the 5-minute. And this is distance in pennies rather than percent. Okay, so if you want to do a little bit of the more complex coding, you can do that. It's not too hard. You just look through this and choose the setting you want and then write it up. You can email me if you have questions, of course, ross@daytradewarrior.com. But for right now, if you want to use pennies away from the 8 moving average, you can just go ahead and use this code right here, and I'll just type it in chat. Okay, so you type that in, you click save, and then when you go into Trade Ideas, you'll go to search and you'll see, hey, look, there's U1, user 1. All right, so that's the one that I just made. Add filter, and I want to say I'm going to look for something that's at least 25 cents, so 0.25, at least 25 cents minimum away from the 8 moving average. Okay, so let's say okay, we'll say okay. So this is now going to get a little bit more refined. Okay, now we only have XON and AMPE and BlackBerry. Okay, so let's just say, I like the look of this. I want to make one for bottom bounces. Right click and go to duplicate. Okay, now we've duplicated the scanner. Go to configure. Go to advanced. And click flip. This will now flip it. This will reverse all the settings for shorting or for getting long here on a bottom bounce. Okay, so it says it's flipped up there. We'll just call this bottom bounce. Flipped. No, that's kind of confusing. We'll just say bottom bounce. All right, now we'll go to history, today. All right, so this may be too filtered and it's not going to return anything, but let's just go in and check and make sure that there's not an error. So advanced. So this is, I think, a problem. I think that has to be over here, 0.25. Maybe it has to be negative. I'm gonna have to double check. So let me double check on one of the ones I've already written. Okay, so negative 0.6. So this one's looking for 60 cents off the 8. So now I've put in the negative 0.25, so it's gonna start populating stuff. Okay, so now these are the bottom bounces, right? So now we have these two scanners, but you know, what you're probably thinking is, geez, that's really clunky. So let's make a new multi-strategy window that we were talking about before. I'll go right click, collaborate, the bottom bounce, copy the whole thing. Strategies, new strategy, collaborate, oops. New strategy, collaborate, and paste. Okay, and now we'll go do the same thing on this one here. Collaborate, copy, strategies, new strategy, collaborate, and paste. Okay, and let's take a look at this. Time frame this morning is fine. And it looks like it didn't copy the colors, so we'd have to go and reset the colors. But what we have now are both the scanners together in one place. Okay, so to change the colors here, we just go to color, bottom bounce, background, red. Okay, strategies, trading course. Okay, that was the top one. Background, green. And then again, if you want to change the columns, you can right click this and go to columns and adjust it. Add the columns you want. Change the color by column by right clicking and do the custom colors. And you can basically modify these scanners in any way you want. The most important thing is that you're not creating scanner overload, right? I have what you can tell are a number of scanners both right here, and I have, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7, or 8 others on another window. But ultimately, if I have too many, they're really not helping me. Okay, so I want to stay focused, and by staying focused, I just keep the scanners that I'm going to be most likely to use throughout the day. So these are all consolidated. These are reversal scanners. These are my pre-market gappers. And right up here, we've got surging up and relative volume. Okay, so momentum strategy, reversal strategy, gap and go, unified, all in one place. These are the tools that I use every single day. Okay, and you guys have the huge advantage that you can just upload my layout as it is. So it's pretty easy for you guys. But if you want to play around with some of the settings, you can of course feel free to. And if you do have questions about it, you can reach out to me or Jeff anytime. We're happy to help you. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up my email address here. And anyone that does have questions that's watching the recording, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get back to you as quick as I can.